the hidden cue that brings an avoidance love back to life. Sometimes love doesn't end with a bang, it just fades into silence. Not because the feelings aren't there anymore, but because one person in the relationship starts pulling away. They don't stop caring, they stop showing they care. And it's not because they're cold or cruel, it's because they're protecting themselves. Avoidants, people who tend to retreat emotionally when things get intense, often disappear into their own minds when they feel pressure, expectations, or the fear of losing their independence. It's like they're holding a beautiful bird in their hand, but the moment they think someone's going to close their fingers around it, they let it go. Now here's the part most people get wrong. When they feel distant, our instinct is to chase harder. We send longer texts, we push for more clarity, we try to close that gap and accidentally widen it. But the hidden cue that reawakens an avoidance love isn't pressure, it's space plus value. It's showing them, not telling them, that you can give them room without disappearing yourself. That you can still be the radiant, magnetic person they first fell for, even when you're not constantly in their face. When they see you thriving, laughing with friends, working on your passions, and not demanding their constant attention, it sends a signal, I want you, but I don't need you to survive. That combination of emotional freedom and undeniable value makes them feel safe to come close again. It's not manipulation. It's reminding them of why they were drawn to you in the first place. Because love for an avoidant doesn't come back with grand speeches or dramatic gestures. It comes back in the quiet moments when they realize they're missing you and it's safe to walk toward you again. When someone with an avoidant attachment style starts to pull away, it's easy to assume the worst, that their feelings have changed, that they've stopped loving you, or that they no longer see a future together. But the truth is often far more nuanced. Avoidants don't usually retreat because their love has vanished. They retreat because they feel pressure. This pressure can come in many forms: expectations to commit faster than they're ready for, repeated requests for reassurance, or even just an unspoken sense that their independence is under threat. For someone wired to protect their autonomy at all costs, even well-intentioned closeness can feel like a signal to create distance. In relationships, closeness and intimacy naturally grow over time. For many people, this feels warm and safe. But for an avoidant, the same closeness that one person experiences as love can trigger feelings of being trapped. They might start to imagine losing their freedom or being judged if they can't meet certain emotional demands. These thoughts create an undercurrent of anxiety, and their instinct is to step back, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally, often both. It's not that they want to stop being with you, it's that they feel safer when there's breathing room. The hard part for their partner is that this pulling away often looks personal. You might notice fewer texts, less affection, or less willingness to make plans. And because humans are wired to notice changes in connection, it can feel like a threat to your own sense of security. This is when many people instinctively chase harder, sending more messages, asking more questions, trying to bridge the gap with words or actions. But this response, while understandable, tends to confirm the avoidance fear that closeness will lead to them losing their space. To truly understand this dynamic, it helps to look at what's happening beneath the surface. Avoidants are not cold-hearted. In fact, many are deeply sensitive. They simply learned early on, often in childhood, that relying too heavily on others for emotional needs can lead to disappointment or loss. So they built a strategy to stay safe. They manage their emotions privately. They keep a certain emotional distance, and they stay alert for signs of being engulfed. When their partner unknowingly adds more emotional weight to the relationship than they're ready to carry, their reflex is to lighten the load by stepping back. This retreat is not a rejection of the person they love. It's a defense mechanism. And like all defenses, it activates automatically. If you can reframe their pulling away as a sign of them trying to self-regulate rather than abandon the relationship, it becomes easier to respond in a way that doesn't escalate the problem. When they feel you can respect their need for space without interpreting it as a lack of care, they're far more likely to return naturally once they've found their emotional footing again. The key is seeing their distance not as the end, but as a temporary recalibration in how they connect. When someone you love starts to feel distant, the natural human impulse is to close the gap. You notice the way their messages become shorter, the way plans get postponed, or the way their energy feels just a little colder than before. Your mind begins searching for reasons. Was it something you said, something you did, or something you didn't do at all? That uncertainty is uncomfortable, and in the absence of clarity, most people react by trying to re-establish closeness as quickly as possible. They send more texts, call more often, initiate more conversations, and try to secure reassurances that the relationship is still okay. It feels logical. If someone you care about is slipping away, you hold on tighter. But when you're dealing with an avoidant personality, this approach often has the opposite effect of what you intend. Avoidants tend to see increased pursuit as confirmation of the very thing they fear being smothered or losing their autonomy. The more energy you put into chasing them, the more they feel the walls closing in. Even if your intention is simply to remind them of your love, to check in, or to bridge the emotional distance, it can come across to them as pressure. And for an avoidant, pressure is the signal to withdraw even further. What feels to you like reassurance can feel to them like control. This mismatch in perception can quickly turn into a cycle. You chase because they pull away, and they pull away because you chase. The tricky part is that chasing doesn't always look desperate or clingy from your perspective. Sometimes it's subtle, dropping hints about spending more time together, asking indirect questions to gauge where you stand, or even making small sacrifices to show how committed you are. But avoidants are often acutely sensitive to changes in the emotional climate of a relationship. They can pick up on the shift from relaxed companionship to an underlying tone of urgency. When they sense that urgency, their instinct is not to meet it with equal enthusiasm, but to create space so they can breathe. Part of why chasing backfires is that it changes the energy dynamic in the relationship. In the beginning, when things felt exciting and effortless, both people were operating from a place of choice, not necessity. You enjoyed each other's presence without needing constant validation. But when chasing enters the picture, the relationship stops feeling like a place of freedom and starts feeling like a place of demand. For someone with avoidant tendencies, that's the exact environment they're trying to avoid. Ironically, the more you try to prove your love during this stage, the less likely it is to land in the way you hope. They don't see it as proof of your devotion. They experience it as evidence that the relationship might cost them their independence. And because independence is their emotional oxygen, they'll do whatever it takes to protect it, even if it means pulling further away from you in the short term. Giving space while still radiating your own value is a delicate balance. But it's the very combination that makes an avoidant feel safe enough to reconnect. Space alone isn't enough if you simply step back without maintaining your presence and self-worth. It can be mistaken for disinterest or emotional withdrawal. On the other hand, radiating value without giving space can come across as pushing too hard, which triggers the avoidant's reflex to retreat. The power lies in showing that you can respect their boundaries while continuing to live a life that is magnetic, fulfilling, and self-assured. For someone with avoidant tendencies, space is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's how they regulate their emotions and maintain their sense of autonomy. When they feel they have the breathing room to come and go without being interrogated or pressured, they can process their feelings in a way that feels safe for them. But during that space, they're still paying attention. They notice whether you're anxiously waiting by the phone or whether you're engaged with your own passions, friendships, and goals. If your entire emotional state seems to hinge on their attention, it reinforces their fear that the relationship will consume their independence. Radiating value means you're living in a way that reflects your best qualities, not just for their sake, but for your own sense of identity. This could be pursuing hobbies that light you up, deepening your social connections, advancing in your career, or simply taking care of your health and well-being. When they see you as the same vibrant person they were initially drawn to, or even someone who's grown since they met you, it reawakens their attraction. It reminds them that they're with someone who is complete on their own, someone whose life is already rich and satisfying. This isn't about pretending not to care or playing games. In fact, pretending usually backfires because it creates emotional inauthenticity, and most people can sense when you're faking detachment. Instead, it's about genuinely shifting your focus back onto yourself and allowing that energy to naturally influence how they see you. The confidence and self-assurance you project when you're fully engaged in your own life sends a subtle but powerful message: I choose you, but I don't need you to feel whole. That's the sweet spot where attraction thrives for someone with avoidant tendencies. When you combine that self-contained value with respectful space, you create an environment where they can return without fear of losing themselves. They begin to associate closeness with freedom rather than with pressure. And in that safety, their affection and connection can re-emerge, not because you demanded it, but because they feel drawn to it. For avoidance, love grows best when it's invited, not insisted upon, and nothing invites it more effectively than a partner who can hold space without disappearing and radiate value without chasing. Showing, not telling, is one of the most powerful ways to reconnect with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. Words, while meaningful, can sometimes feel empty or even overwhelming to an avoidant, especially if they are already feeling pressure. Reassurances like, "I'm here for you," or "I love you," might be sincere, but when the other person is emotionally pulled back, these declarations can feel like demands for reciprocation. Instead of trying to verbally convince them of your worth or the relationship's strength, letting your actions and your life speak for you allows them to observe at their own pace the qualities that drew them to you in the first place. When you live in alignment with your passions and values, it sends a nonverbal message that you are grounded, independent, and fulfilled. This doesn't mean you shut them out or pretend you don't care. It means you prioritize your own well-being and personal growth regardless of the emotional temperature of the relationship. You might spend more time nurturing friendships, diving into creative projects, exploring new interests, or investing in your physical and mental health. These choices not only enrich your life, but also subtly demonstrate resilience and self-sufficiency. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this kind of self-contained energy is deeply attractive. They are more likely to approach you when they see you as a whole person who has joy, meaning, and purpose beyond the relationship. It helps them feel that being with you won't come at the cost of their independence. If instead they sense that your happiness relies entirely on their presence or attention, it reinforces the fear that closeness will mean responsibility for your emotional state. Showing rather than telling also reduces the possibility of triggering defensiveness. If you constantly verbalize your needs and emotions when they're not ready to engage, they might feel cornered or criticized. But if they witness you living well and authentically, it bypasses that resistance. They can notice your qualities without feeling like you're trying to sell them on your worth. In essence, you're letting them discover, again, why they were drawn to you rather than explaining it to them. Another subtle benefit of this approach is that it shifts the power dynamic in a healthy way. Instead of placing all the focus on how to get them back, you place it on creating a life that is worth returning to. This puts you back in an empowered position, not by manipulation, but by genuine self-investment. Avoidants often come back when they realize they're missing not just a person, but the unique energy that person brings to their life. And the easiest way to remind them of that is to embody it fully in your daily actions, not just in your words. Over time, consistent, value-driven behavior makes them feel safe to re-engage. They see that you're not going to chase or pressure them, yet you're still offering something irresistible, a life and presence that they want to be a part of again. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, safety and freedom are the emotional conditions in which love can thrive. Safety doesn't mean constant reassurance or endless declarations of loyalty. It means they can be close to you without feeling like they're going to lose themselves. Freedom doesn't mean detachment or indifference. It means they have room to breathe, make their own choices, and approach the relationship at a pace that feels natural for them. When both of these elements are present, it creates an environment where their natural desire for connection can surface without being tangled up in fear. An avoidant often retreats not because the feelings are gone, but because the relationship environment begins to feel like a threat to their independence. This might happen when routines get too rigid, when expectations grow unspoken but heavy, or when emotional needs are expressed in a way that feels urgent and consuming. In those moments, their instinct is to create space, not to punish, but to preserve their sense of self. If, during that space, they feel like you're still holding the door open without trying to drag them back in, it builds trust. They begin to believe they can be close to you without forfeiting their autonomy. Safety in this context is about emotional acceptance. It's knowing they can share their thoughts or feelings without being met with judgment, criticism, or demands. It's being able to take a step back without the relationship collapsing or turning into a battlefield. When you react to their distance with calm understanding rather than panic, or pursuit. It communicates that you're someone who can hold steady even in moments of uncertainty. That steadiness is magnetic to an avoidant because it doesn't activate their fear of entrapment, it soothes it. Freedom is equally vital. It's allowing them the choice to engage without micromanaging when or how it happens. That doesn't mean tolerating neglect or accepting less than you deserve. It means you don't try to force connection through constant reminders, repeated questions, or emotional ultimatums. Ironically, the more freedom they feel, the more they're likely to choose closeness on their own terms. When they know they can step forward or back without triggering a crisis, they tend to linger longer in connection because it feels safe. When safety and freedom coexist, love starts to feel expansive rather than restrictive. They can miss you without fearing what will happen when they return. They can enjoy your presence without worrying about losing their own identity. This combination doesn't just help avoidants re-engage, it's what sustains the connection over the long term. Relationships rooted in both emotional safety and personal freedom allow love to grow without being suffocated by control or eroded by distance. For the avoidant, this is the rare balance that allows their walls to come down, not because they were forced, but because they finally feel they don't need them. So if there's one truth to carry with you from all of this, it's that love isn't always lost when it grows quiet. Sometimes it's just resting, waiting for the right conditions to bloom again. For someone with avoidant tendencies, those conditions aren't built from more pressure, more demands, or more chasing. They're built from a space where they feel safe to be themselves and free to choose you over and over again. When you can hold your own center, live your life fully, and allow the connection to breathe, you give them something they can't resist: love without cages. And in that freedom, they remember why they wanted to be close to you in the first place. Thank you for giving me your time, your attention, and your open mind today. My hope is that you leave here not just understanding avoidance a little better, but understanding the quiet power you have when you stop trying to force love and start creating the space where it naturally grows. I wish you connection without fear, love without pressure, and a heart that stays open, whether it's near or far. Thank you and goodbye.